This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
Gatorade Zero, the #1 proven electrolyte blend, made with zero sugar. Designed to hydrate better than water so you can lose more sweat and push more limits. Gatorade Zero, is it in you?
This episode is brought to you by Navy Federal Credit Union. Navy Federal can help you find and finance the right vehicle with ease. With Navy Federal's car buying service powered by TrueCar, you can find the vehicle that's right for you as you search through inventory and compare models. And you can get an amazing rate when you finance with Navy Federal. Visit NavyFederal.org/TrueCar to learn more. Navy Federal is insured by NCUA, credit and collateral subject to approval. Visit NavyFederal.org/TrueCar to learn more.
Wasabi Technologies is purpose-built to free businesses from skyrocketing storage costs and unpredictable egress fees from those old and top-heavy legacy providers. You know, the big guys. Wasabi is the go-to provider for professional and collegiate sports teams around the world. From Wasabi's AI-enabled intelligent media storage, Wasabi Air, to the industry's only cloud storage service with triple protection against cyber criminals, Wasabi is driving innovation in data storage, all for up to 80% less than those other guys. Try them out for free at wasabi.com.
Bonus Bucks is back on the Fan. We have 9 chances for you to win $1,000 every weekday. That's every hour from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. 10 our keywords to learn more at KFAN.com. Bonus Bucks is presented by BigDeck.com.
Pouring into the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line for our in-studio guest, Aaron Gleeman, including this one. This is from Paul in St. Louis Park.
Okay.
Gleeman is solid as usual today. Listening to him talk about the sticky situation Twins are in seems to me the fruit of continually fielding an almost good enough team year after year. By that, I mean the organization seems to continually field a team that might be a contender, but rarely is, and now here we are, not knowing what we are or where we're going, and making the team less marketable to sell. The organization made this bet of mediocrity. Now they got to lay in it. Go Lynx. That probably characterizes the feeling of a lot of fans, yes. I would say, who are, I think it's a reasonable position. I don't think that's a radical position at all.
I agree with all that, including the Go Lynx. I think I'm not a fan of rebuilding, and I think it's a little bit of a scam. I think it kind of provides cover for teams and owners to pare down the payroll to the studs and not compete for 6 years. And I think in the minds of a lot of fans, because there has been successful rebuilds, the Astros, the Cubs, etc., they go, well, we'll come out the other side, we'll win 3 World Series. Well, a lot of times you come out the other side and you win, 1 division title,
sure,
and then you got to rebuild again. Yeah. And I give the Twins, from a front office standpoint, credit that they have not gone through a rebuild. Falvey and company have been at the helm since 2017. They've sold 2021. They sold Nelson Cruz for Joe Ryan, was a great trade. But for the most part, they've at least been neutral or light buyers at deadline situations. For the most part, they've tried to compete. Now, I think the lack of quality of the AL Central more often than not has enabled them to do that. But what I'll say about that, so in general, I'm in favor of teams, if you think you can win 80-something games, try to make the playoffs. And I like that approach, as opposed to we're just always trading away talent.
Right.
But if you take that approach, which the Twins have more often than not, and you rank 24th in payroll after you ranked 16th 2 years earlier, you do need resources to actually do that, or you're getting into that middle ground that the email said, which is you're just sort of, in a half measure all the time. You're always just hovering around 500. Even in 2023, when they made the playoffs and they won their first playoff series in 20 years, they were 87 and 75. And that, for the most part, other than 2019, when everything clicked in the Bomba squad and they won 100 games, this team has been plus or minus, a handful of games of 500 on either side. And I would prefer that to, a 7-year rebuild where they lose 90 games every year and they don't spend any money, and there's this kind of carrot in front of fans that may never arrive. But if you're going to take that kind of middle ground and just sort of a constant competitiveness, you got to be better at it than they've been. The few big contracts you do hand out, Correa, for instance, you can't have those flop to the extent that his has, because that's just a huge chunk of your payroll. And the payroll has been pared down compared to 3 or 4 years ago, that they're missing like $30 million that could have been spent on a better this or a better that to get you from 83 wins to 88 wins. Because honestly, with this wild card setup, 86, 87, 88 wins will make the playoffs. And that's part of the murkiness of what we talked about last segment about should they buy, should they sell? This is not a good team. This is a very flawed team that, even going back to the middle of last year, has played losing baseball more often than not. And they're 3 games out of a playoff spot. Like, go look at some of these other wild card contenders, and they're a game above 500 or a game below 500. Like, this is not
dominant. Yeah.
These are not world beating. This is not world beating competition. But can the Twins, move past 5 of them into a playoff spot? Then I know there's always the argument of like, well, is it even worth it just to grab the last playoff spot? I think undeniably yes, particularly in baseball, because we've seen last playoff spot go to the World Series within the last 3 years. We've seen multiple examples of that. Baseball, more than any other sport, is just get in. That's the number one key to winning a World Series, is to get into the playoffs and just get hot. And I'm not saying the Twins are going to do that or are capable of doing that, but that's part of the tricky thing. Is it is worth pushing for the playoffs, but is it worth pushing for the playoffs when you're realistically 23% to do it? And if the 77% that you don't make it is going to have a negative effect on you because you didn't sell guys that you could get future value for.
Speaking of Correa, this came in earlier from Clayton out of Rochester. A .264 batting average, 12 home runs, and 49 runs batted in. Those were Pat Mears numbers in 1995. Carlos Dior Correa would love those numbers. So the floor is yours on Carlos, who you've written about.
Yeah.
I think the piece I remember centering on the clutch numbers. I think there's a fancier name for that in 2025. That was a lot of what you got into.
Yes.
So where are we on Correa?
I mean, there's two issues with Correa. One, like the email said, he's just not hitting overall. I mean, he's hitting a empty 260, which is to say not that many walks, not that much power. And he's still a very good defensive shortstop, but that is not a $20 million a year player, let alone a $35 million a year player. And that hurts because it's basically a quarter of the Twins payroll going to him. But then beyond that, like you mentioned, I wrote a couple weeks ago, part of his lore with the Astros was that he was just this clutch performer. Every year he'd be a main character in the playoffs. Yeah. They went to 3 World Series, and that's just vanished. Even beyond the overall decline in his performance, let's say with the Astros, he had an 850 OPS, and now he's got a 750 OPS, whatever it is. But even beyond that, his numbers with runners in scoring position, high leverage spots, which is basically like late, close situations, they've just tanked this year, past years, even some of his good years with the Twins. And that, to me, one of the sabermetric ideas is that clutch doesn't really exist. It's just all sort of a sample size. Yeah. That if a guy plays 20 years, his clutch numbers are going to end up looking like his overall numbers. And I think we're sort of seeing that, unfortunately, with Correa. He was great for 8 years in the clutch. Now he's been bad for 4 or 5 years in the clutch. It's all going to come out in the end. They're going to be identical. Unfortunately. But the Twins got the wrong half of that, basically. But I don't know what you really do with him. I do think there are signs from him physically that he's just not the same. I mean, he's had a bunch of foot problems. He's had some back problems. He had a wrist problem earlier this year. I will say he continues to play a very good shortstop, which tells me he's not a total mess physically. But to me, his swing and his approach at the plate just doesn't look like what you think of as Carlos Correa. It's a lot of just trying to flip opposite field singles. It's a lot of just weak choppers. It's a lot of contact just to make contact. He's very rarely pulling balls in the air for power. And as that goes on 3 months, 4 months, I just start to wonder, like, why? Like, what, he talks about approach and mechanics, and I have no doubt that those things, he's working on it. He's not a guy who's, I would ever question putting in the work, but I just wonder at this point, he's 30 or whatever he is now, and unfortunately, first of all, he has a no-trade clause. Even if he wanted to leave, if he, sees the writing on the wall from the team standpoint, from the ownership standpoint, and says, this just isn't what I thought I was getting involved in. I mean, first of all, it's partly his doing because he hasn't performed. But even if he said, or they approached him and he said, you know what? Yeah, work on a trade. He has 3 years beyond this one at basically $100 million, or maybe a little bit more than that. 30-something million a year. I mean, who's going to take on that money? Even huge payroll teams are not going to be willing to take on that money. So then you're not looking at getting anything in return from like a prospect standpoint. Maybe it would be worthwhile for the Twins to just dump salary, but I think the Twins would have to eat some of that money just to dump, let's say you have to eat a quarter of what he's owed. Well, then it's like, okay, now we're just paying someone else to play him. We're not getting anything in return. And all of this is a moot point, by the way, if he just isn't interested in being traded.
Buxton had an interesting answer the other night to any rumors about the possibility of being on the trade market. He obviously has the no trade, made it clear that's what I am. I'm a Minnesota Twin forever. Let's say for the sake of this discussion that he either didn't answer that question at all or it was a more open-ended answer. Do you have any idea what the market for him would be right now? And beyond that, there's the sort of the philosophical fun question we've had the last few days around here is, would you even deign to consider trading him at this point, knowing his injury history, but also seeing him kind of bring everything together to the degree that he seems to this year?
I think the injury aspect would make it so that his trade value was very good, but not great, like not overwhelming value. You would definitely be able to get good value.
Because with the contract's reasonable.
This contract, which initially people complained about endlessly because they're paying him $15 million.
Yeah.
That's not a top 100 salary anymore in Major League Baseball. And beyond that, even when he misses in the past years, misses half the season, he's provided more than $15 million worth of value. In fact, I believe he's already provided in terms of like wins above replacement, and you can convert that to dollars. He's already provided the full amount of the contract, and there's 3 years left. Like you said, he's playing at his best. He's been healthy. He's an all-star. He's the best center fielder in the league right now. But it's also worth remembering that he signed that contract, which right before the lockout, knowing, yes, there was an injury component, that he was never going to get a $300 million deal. But even at the time, I remember writing, like, there's no doubt that he could have tried to bet on himself and gotten 150 instead of 100 million. But he didn't want to go anywhere. He wanted to be in Minnesota. And the no trade clause was a huge factor, not because he thought, down the road, I'll be able to get extra money out of this, or I'll be able to, pressure them into trading me somewhere, but not some. He just didn't want to go anywhere. And he's got 3 young kids and a wife, and they genuinely like it here. And I think it's interesting that the same fan base, or just Minnesota sports in general, who have such a chip, and you're talking to a lifelong Minnesotan, so let me just say I'm the same way, has such a chip on their collective shoulder of nobody wants to be here, and nobody wants to stay here.
Yeah.
And now he's healthy and having a good season. It's like, cash him in for value, cash him in for value. And you're talking about the interview he gave at the All-Star, and it was like, well, I don't worry about that because I got a no trade clause. And he even, I think, said something like, I feel good walking in that clubhouse every day and knowing I'm going to wear a Minnesota Twins jersey for the rest of my career, and that sort of thing. That should be music to every Minnesotan's ears. That's what you're waiting for stars to feel like. I get hey, this is a guy who's been injured a lot. His value may never be higher. But at the point you're trading Byron Buxton with a $15 million salary for 3 years, you're just blowing the whole thing up. And then we're back to the whole rebuilding discussion.
That's why, I think you can't. Now, again, if somebody obviously blows you out of the water and offers you 5 more things than you expected to get, I guess you can never say never. But to me, even the knowledge that, well, how long are we on borrowed time here? I mean, based on his history, can we even expect he's going to stay as healthy, relatively speaking, as he's been this year, the rest of this year, next year? That's still, you could say, a bit of a gamble. But when you factor in the price, as you say, I'm willing to. If I'm running the Twins, I'm willing to play that out now. And I'm going to even consider the possibility that the baseball gods are going to even it up for him a little bit. And now for the next maybe 2-3 years, maybe he is going to play 135 games a year, or 100. Perish the thought, 140. Even if he gets to 125, with the price we're paying him, if in this kind of production, you have to keep him. Even if there's the possibility that next week there's another injury and he's out for the next 25 games, I think that's the price you have to be willing to live with. I like that option, even if that would be disappointing, better than just dumping him.
Yeah, well, first of all, he might just not be interested, in which case you can't move him.
It's moot, yeah.
Secondly, I agree with all that, and he's already been worth twice his salary in the first half of this season. I agree there's all kinds of injury risk, for sure. But also, this is an entertainment product, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I can tell you I've watched, more Byron Buxton than anybody. There, in my, 30-something years of hardcore Twins watching, covering, fandom, whatever, I've never seen a more entertaining player. I've never seen a guy, and we just saw the other day when he hit for the cycle, this was a great example of this, obviously, but his overall value is up there with all-time Twins greats per game, when healthy, all that. But I've also, within that even, I've never seen a guy at a high level in so many aspects of the game. Power hitting. I think he's got the second highest slugging percentage. He's tied with Justin Morneau. Only Killebrew in Twins history has higher. Gold Glove caliber center field. He's 17 out of 17 on stealing bases. He's also been a great clutch performer this year, as we talked about Correa failing in those spots. He's hitting like 350 in clutch spots. But beyond all that, he's just fun to watch. He is so many people's favorite, not because they think he's cute or he has a funny quote or anything, but because he just brings an element to baseball that is just more enjoyable. And it's not a gimmick. The actual value matches that. And I just think it's so rare to develop a guy like that. It's so rare in his case to get through 6-7 years of never-ending injuries and come out the other side at age 31, which is an age without the injuries. A lot of center fielders have lost the step or three, and they're playing right field or they're not hitting for power. He is playing at the peak of his powers right now on all facets. He's making basically less than half of Correa, which tells you he's less than half of kind of a superstar or even a star salary. He wants to be here. He's beloved in that clubhouse. He's beloved by fans. If somebody's going to say, we'll give you 20 great prospects for him, I get the value component, but also and then what? First of all, you're not going to be able to spend that $15 million on anything resembling the upside of Byron Buxton. We know that prospects maybe is a coin flip for each one panning out. If you're lucky and you get 4 prospects for Byron Buxton, you might have one of them who's almost as good as Byron Buxton 3 years from now. And then when that happens, are we going to be sitting here having the same discussion going, well, this guy they got for Buxton 5 years ago, he's starting to get expensive. Maybe they should trade him and then you just get into this cycle. I do feel like you got to put your foot down somewhere and just say, we're not just going to be a perpetual churn of send this guy, the Mets want him. Who cares if the Mets want him? He wants to be here. He's signed for 3 more years at a reasonable salary. He's playing great baseball. He's one of the most exciting players I've ever seen in my entire life. I think it's a weird mindset where everything has to be like, it's a stock market where it's like, they could get excess value. You think anybody cares about excess value? They're sitting there, they're watching me just hit for the cycle. You think some 12-year-old kid who's now a Byron Buxton fan for life cares you could get, the Mets number 21 prospect thrown into a deal? No.
I think it's the scar tissue of the last few years and the number of games he's missed. And so then people get in that mode of, okay, now we got something. We finally got an opening. But I think if you, again, rationally factor in the contract, you really shouldn't be offended by anything. And even if he ends up missing a bunch more, it's obviously better if he plays than he doesn't. But I think that's what happens to people. They go back to, but all those games he missed, you can't. There's no way this is going to hold up. This is fool's gold. So let's see if we can steal a bunch of stuff from another team.
You're definitely true, because I can tell you even the comments of the article I wrote about him hitting for the cycle, or the comments a few days earlier about him making the All-Star team. All the comments are like, I never doubted his potential, but it would just be nice to watch him stay healthy and do this. Yeah. And I just want to scream, that's what you should be looking at right now.
That's what he's doing.
And there's this, I get that there's a fear that, the other shoe's going to drop. And maybe that does happen in the second half or next year or whatever. But it is a weird mindset to get so obsessed with the injury issues in the past. He played 100-something games last year. True. He's going to play 100-something games this year. He's blown away his salary in terms of value, 5 out of the last 6 years. And yet people look at him and they go, I wish I could just watch him do this. And you want to go, what are we looking at here? What? I don't understand it. He was hitting a double last night in the All-Star game, and people are like, I just wish he could make more All-Star games. I don't know. It's just a weird, I do feel like it's a Minnesota thing more so than, I'm sure this is the case in other states too, but I do feel like there's almost like a brain rot where it's just this star, we could get more future value for it. Because I think about Garnett. Name a star across sports, particularly when there's a high salary involved and or injuries involved. And it's always, we got to make them someone else's problem. And if you do that enough, what you're left with is a team with no stars and nothing you want to watch and a losing record.
Should we be at all worried that he's not more interested in winning?
I mean, I think you will find a lot of players don't sort of compartmentalize the front office's job and their job. And I know this from experience asking guys near the trade deadline, hey, do you think they should do this? And Correa, he's smart enough and into it enough that he will often comment. But a lot of players just go, that's not my gig. And first of all, they've won a decent amount with him. And if you want to break it down further, when he's in the lineup,
that's true.
They have a winning record.
Right.
He's doing all he can to win. And I get where people go, oh, he's fine, not winning. But I also come back to any other non-sports job. If someone was really highly paid and they were a great performer and their company just gave them a 10-year contract, a no-move contract, and they have a family of 5 and they like living here, no one would ever go, you work at the the Microsoft office here. But if you went out to Seattle, they're a little more big time out there, and they might win. There might be a few more company parties out there, and no one would ever think twice about someone going, well, but I like it here. And so it's a fascinating thing that Minnesotans are obsessed with people liking or not liking Minnesota. And then when some guy from Georgia comes here and makes his life here and likes it and is, by the way, doing great at his job, it's like, oh, he doesn't want to win?
Well,
what kind of loser wants to stay in Minnesota?
I think a little bit of that is, we want the main players to occasionally assert themselves in that regard, to say, hey, as Correa has in the past, to say, hey, wait a minute. I mean, what are we doing here? Cutting pay. Now, none of them are going to get that specific, but just grumbling a little bit. I think they're just looking for somebody to sort of voice the frustration.
But that cuts both ways, too, because if you're a player and you do that too much, or you do it in a way that is seen as more negative,
that's true.
Then you're...
Yeah. Well, right now, though, it wouldn't be negative because everybody's against the owners, as you know. Real quick, 2 last things I want to get to. Aaron Gleeman in studio. The Joe Ryan comments about being in the, in the trade.
I saw that clip.
Now, we played it, and it came off to me as, boy, he didn't sound like he's going to be devastated at all if, in fact, he's moved. But I don't know Joe Ryan like maybe you do. So do we read anything into that he was somehow sending a message like, yeah, I wouldn't mind at all going to somebody who's a little further along?
I didn't take it as a message. I took it as, he'll speak his mind. He's a real interesting guy. He's a smart guy. I took it as, well, yeah, this is an interesting time of year. You start to see your name pop up and everything. And also, here's the thing. He doesn't have a no trade. And he's been traded once before. And in fact, he got traded while he was in Japan participating in the Olympics. Got traded from the Rays to the Twins for Nelson Cruz in mid-2021. Right, They called him at 4 a.m. and they said, pack your stuff, you're a Minnesota Twins now. And if that doesn't tell you the business side of this thing. So I think whenever I see comments about that, where someone is basically saying, it's a weird time of year and what can you do? I try to take it at face value in the sense of
the philosophical.
He knows if caller ID on his phone pops up some afternoon and it says defaulted. He knows there's nothing he can do about it. He knows you just got to say, well, that's the business. And I certainly don't think, particularly when he's pitching at his best, and he will be the first one to credit their coaching staff, their analytics guys. He's throwing 96 in the All-Star game. When they got him, he was throwing 91. They've worked him into a potentially solid pitcher, into an all-star caliber pitcher. And that's not to say he has to be loyal to them for the rest of his life or anything. But I took his comments of like, this is a weird time of year. I'm sure he gets texts and he goes on social media and he sees his name, Red Sox want him, whatever it is. And I think a lot of players take it as, what can I do? Like, players are very big on, hey, I control what I can control. And usually they're talking about on-field stuff. If a pitcher gives up a ground ball, and it, finds a hole between shortstop and third base, I got the ground ball. What happened after that? I can't obsess about that. And I feel like when you don't have a no-trade clause, when your team is struggling, when the ownership situation and the front office situation are in flux, and you are going to be a big commodity. I mean, in terms of realistic guys they might trade, like we're ruling out Buxton, let's say, he would by far have the most value. Not only is he pitching at an all-star level, not only is starting pitching always at a premium midseason, but he's got this year and 2 more years after that. And so if
Which is why they ain't going to trade him, right?
Again, it goes back to, what does this look like if you do trade Joe Ryan? Because then you're saying 26 and 27 are rebuilding years. And at that point, is this front office going to be around in 2028 when at that point they'll have missed the playoffs in 6 out of 7 years? I don't know. I just think it's a very complicated situation made more complicated by
No doubt.
the uncertainty at the top and even in the middle management realm, let alone manager, coaching staff, roster, all that stuff.
Well, that's why, in a lot of ways, it's kind of what you're describing is very dysfunctional because, as you said, you got human beings who want to protect their jobs.
Right.
You got that going against the ownership challenge and the fact that they're sort of in this nether world where they're just slightly under 500. None of it, I think, is very healthy. We're out of time. But next time we have you on, I want to go deeper into some economics. I'm not a great economics mind, but I don't think you and I have discussed the ongoing question of whether there is a form of the salary cap that could be beneficial for baseball. When I say beneficial, probably not for some players,
right?
But maybe for some others. And more importantly for me, what I get traumatized by is the notion that there's no bottom minimum, in terms of, because that's to me the one thing that would help baseball to say, no, you can't have a payroll of $9 million anymore. There's
I agree
limits
completely
to that. And I don't know if it would actually balance things out more, but I also understand that this union's the strongest of all the sports unions, and there are a lot of parameters and machinations to work out. But I think it's worthy of our discussion to see if you think there's ever going to be any there in that regard, and if there isn't, if there is going to be any other way to try to bring up the bottom. That's such a big issue.
So much of the attention about baseball economics are about Yankees and Mets and Dodgers, and I get that. When you're a Twins fan, they got three times the payroll. It's tough. But I feel like there should be so much more paid to, why are the Pittsburgh Pirates spending $62 million?
Exactly.
They're getting $100 million before a pitch is thrown from the TV deals. And, the Tampa Bay, and there's all sorts of teams. And unfortunately, the Twins are only about a half step above them in terms of their spending. Mm-hmm. And I completely agree with that. I don't think the union will agree to a salary cap. But I do think that if you push the salary floor as in tandem with that, you maybe can find some common ground and say the total dollars spent on players will remain pretty normal, but it'll be a lower high and a higher low. And I think that'll be better from a competitive standpoint. Although the fear then is the Pirates and other teams, and maybe the Twins, will just spend $1 more than they have to. And teams like the Dodgers won't be handing out these $50 million a year deals. So you think it'll come out in the wash, but you won't have as high an upside if you're a true superstar performer.
Good. Maybe we'll get into that in more depth next time. You enjoyed the All-Star game, I assume, as All-Star games go.
I agreed with what you guys were saying.
Nice.
For a one-off thing, because it's not going to be extra innings every year in the All-Star game.
No.
The thing I kept coming back to is, whenever you see the players involved are into it, that makes it entertaining for me. No question. Yep. And there was no doubt they got out of the dugout. They weren't even at the top step. They were on the field reacting to every pitch and every swing. And once you can connect like that with the players and they care, then I think for someone sitting on the couch watching, it's like, this is an All-Star game where at least right now in this moment, they care. And I'm a big NBA fan. I can't remember anybody caring in an All-Star game ever. No. So I feel like that is one area where baseball has had the upper hand.
Thanks for coming in. Great hour, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks for having me.
Senior athletic writer Aaron Gleeman joining us. Bonus bucks time, a little late, but better late. Brett Blake more than never.
That's right. The Fan and BigDeck.com wants to give you a shot to win bonus bucks for the National Cash Contest. Head to KFAN.com. The keyword is green. Keyword green at KFAN.com. Keyword
Gatorade Zero, the #1 proven electrolyte blend, made with zero sugar. Designed to hydrate better than water so you can lose more sweat and push more limits. Gatorade Zero. Is it in you?
The last thing anyone wants is to leave behind confusion, stress, or worse, family conflict. That's why estate planning isn't just for the wealthy. It's for families like mine, and probably like yours. With Trust and Will, I created my estate plan in minutes, from naming guardians for my kids to putting our house in a trust to avoid probate. Fast, affordable, and way easier than I thought. Every plan is designed by estate planning attorneys and customized for your state. Plans start at just $199 and include essentials like healthcare directives and power of attorney. With Trust and Will's bank-level security and built-in privacy protections, your personal information and your wishes stay safe. Whether you're newly married, raising kids, caring for aging parents, or just want peace of mind, Trust and Will makes it easy to protect what matters most. Go to trustandwill.com, use code RADIO at checkout, and save 20% on your personalized plan. Because there's no better time to protect the people you love. Trust and Will is an online estate planning service. See website for details.
This episode is brought to you by Navy Federal Credit Union. Navy Federal can help you find and finance the right vehicle with ease. And this summer, you're in the driver's seat with savings. You can get a $250 bonus when you buy your next car through Navy Federal's car buying service, powered by TrueCar and financed with Navy Federal. With this tool, you can find the vehicle that's right for you as you search through inventory and compare models. And you could get an amazing rate when you finance with Navy Federal. Navy Federal strives to support all active duty, veterans, and their families to achieve their personal and financial goals. And this partnership with TrueCar is one of the many tools Navy Federal uses to help its members. Make your plan with Navy Federal and TrueCar today. Navy Federal Credit Union. To qualify for the $250 bonus, car purchase and financing must be completed by September 2nd, 2025. Terms and conditions apply and are available at NavyFederal.org/TrueCar. Credit and collateral subject to approval. Navy Federal is insured by NCUA.
Green. If you want to chime into what's happening with your favorite KFAN shows, you can make your voice heard on the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. This lets us know what you have to say by texting your message to 64686. That is 64686. Standard text message and data rates apply.
Caitlin Clark in crisis? Is that possible? Yes, I think it is. She's hurt again. All-Star Weekend's coming up. She's supposed to be the big host. I doubt she's going to be available for any of that.
Judging by our last conversation, you think the Fever are looking to trade for value?
Well,
She's being injured so much.
That's injury. The Byron Buxton of the WNBA, yes, for God's sake. But here's the stat that I had not seen that is now getting a little bit of the attention that it deserves. Let's backtrack first. Her overall numbers this year in the little she's played, because she's been out a lot and now is out again. Double check the injury. It's a pulled muscle again, if I'm not mistaken. And she got, I think she got hurt this time very late in their victory last night. So her overall numbers in the 13 games she's played, solid, more than solid. 16.5 points, 8.8 assists, 5 rebounds, 1.6 steals, 2.2 made three-pointers a game. That's still pretty damn good in her second year. You'll take that. Good all-around numbers. Her passing's still exemplary. But here's the stat that got my attention. On the road, she has taken 35 three-point shots. She has made 2. 2 for 35 from three-point land on the road. That's astonishing, is it not? Now, at home, I guess she's 27 for 69 at home, which sounds more like it. But 2 for that's hard to do. 2 for 35 on three-pointers. What's the injury? Did you see it?
It looks like a groin again.
Groin, yeah, that's it. I think that's a recurring one, if I'm not mistaken.
That stat almost sounds like fake.
I agree.
Like I've got to look it up.
I agree.
You know?
I couldn't. I was stunned by it. I could not even believe it. Because I think All-Star Weekend's this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's in Indianapolis for the WNBA. And where else would it be, by the way, other than Indy? I mean, that would make all the sense in the world, I think. Don't you? So I would say that's a Caitlin Clark crisis right now. Because for the first time in her career, I mean, I don't think she ever missed a game at Iowa. And I don't believe she missed much, if any, last season, her rookie year in the WNBA. And this year she's had all kinds of significant issues. And remember, the WNBA season is longer than it used to be, but it's still just 40. I think it's 44 games now. So if you miss 8 games, that's a significant part of the season. That feels a lot chunkier, obviously, than in an 82-game NBA season or in an 84-game NHL season, which we are about to look forward to as well. So this might be the first significant. I mean, there have been some juicy Caitlin Clark controversies and conundrums But this one feels like it might be a little bit, actually a little bit more, has a little bit more substance to it, whether it's the shooting issue on the road, or, as I said, the fact that this year she's just had a series of nagging injuries, and what impact is that going to have on the team, on their chance? I think they're pretty certain to make the playoffs, but they've basically, I think, been a 500 club. So my assumption is their seed is not going to be particularly good either. Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line is open at 64686. Lots of good reaction to our discussion with Aaron Gleeman. For example, Charlie in Bemidji, it's absurd to suggest that Buxton, especially with all the upside that Gleeman has outlined, might actually make the team noticeably more attractive to a new owner. It seems like he could be the center to build a team around, and the marketing slam dunk he represents, provided we haven't lost all of our good starting pitching by then. Yeah, I mean, I don't think these guys who are interested in buying teams, I don't think it's ever about any one particular player. I do think that, and this is obviously meaningless because he's got a no trade, and he has reiterated just a couple of days ago that he doesn't want to go anywhere. But if you want to just play the game out, I don't think that if there's an owner considering buying the Twins and somehow, some way Buxton would be traded, that they'd say, we're not, now I'm on board with the deal. These guys don't think on those levels. They want toys. And if they want a toy, they want it no matter who's there. Now, I will add that if you're a prospective owner, I think you'd say, well, you'd like to have a couple of sort of foundational pieces. Now, I use that term advisedly with Buxton because of the injury history. As someone, though, who is on record as saying that even if he said he would waive the no-trade clause, I wouldn't deal him unless literally it was like Herschel Walker. If it's that kind of deal, then you can never say no. You can never say for sure that you'd say no. But otherwise, and my eyes are open, so don't text me with, well, don't you realize about his history? Yes, we know all about the history. But we also know about the price. And I'm willing, like I said, to kind of tempt the baseball gods that he might be in a stretch where he's going to stay healthier than we're accustomed to for a couple of years. And I'm willing to make that bet at this price. I'd say he has shown too much this year to just throw that all away, even if there's that knowledge that how do we really know he's going to be able to sustain it? There's always trade-offs with these decisions and with players like this, but I would certainly keep him, and I would think any owner would rather have him because he is box office. Now, I say that, though, advisedly, because the Twins' attendance is a mess. But if you put enough other good pieces around him, if the team can be a contending team and there's a new owner, because I really do think that has a lot to say about why the attendance is as bad as it is. People have just turned off as long as the poll ads are in charge. Whether it's fair to the poll ads or not is at some point immaterial. That with new ownership, there would be a greater box office component with what Buxton represents as well. We need to get caught up because we went long with Gleeman because he's always got such good content for us. We've got Top 5 at 5 yet to come at the top of the hour. By the way, with an update, I'm hoping regarding a player that some thought the Minnesota Timberwolves might have a shot at. That dream has died, if you consider it a dream. That may well be a part of the Top 5 at 5. In addition, Kessler in studio at 5:30, and when we return, I could say I could call it a twin story, but it's actually much bigger than that. It is a story that involves a former Minnesota Twin, and the details of it are absolutely tragic and rather confounding. We'll give you some details if you somehow missed this particular story.
Gatorade is the #1 proven electrolyte blend designed to hydrate better than water. So you can lose more sweat and raise your game. Gatorade, is it in you?
The last thing anyone wants is to leave behind confusion, stress, or worse, family conflict. That's why estate planning isn't just for the wealthy. It's for families like mine, and probably like yours. With Trust and Will, I created my estate plan in minutes, from naming guardians for my kids to putting our house in a trust to avoid probate. Fast, affordable, and way easier than I thought. Every plan is designed by estate planning attorneys and customized for your state. Plans start at just $199 and include essentials like healthcare directives and power of attorney. With Trust and Will's bank-level security and built-in privacy protections, your personal information and your wishes stay safe. Whether you're newly married, raising kids, caring for aging parents, or just want peace of mind, Trust and Will makes it easy to protect what matters most. Go to trustandwill.com, use code RADIO at checkout, and save 20% on your personalized plan. Because there's no better time to protect the people you love. Trust and Will is an online estate planning service. See website for details.
This episode is brought to you by Navy Federal Credit Union. Navy Federal can help you find and finance the right vehicle with ease. And this summer, you're in the driver's seat with savings. You can get a $250 bonus when you buy your next car through Navy Federal's car buying service, powered by TrueCar and financed with Navy Federal. With this tool, you can find the vehicle that's right for you as you search through inventory and compare models. And you could get an amazing rate when you finance with Navy Federal. Navy Federal strives to support all active duty, veterans, and their families to achieve their personal and financial goals. And this partnership with TrueCar is one of the many tools Navy Federal uses to help its members. Make your plan with Navy Federal and TrueCar today. Navy Federal Credit Union. To qualify for the $250 bonus, car purchase and financing must be completed by September 2nd, 2025. Terms and conditions apply and are available at NavyFederal.org/TrueCar. Credit and collateral subject to approval. Navy Federal is insured by NCUA.
Back in a minute here in the first.
Head over our contest page, enter for your shot to win a family 4-pack of tickets for the newest Marvel film, The Fantastic Four First Steps. I'm interested. In theaters July 23rd. Enter today at KFAN.com keyword contest. That's KFAN.com keyword contest.
Danny Serafini was drafted by the Minnesota Twins in round 1 of the 1992 Major League Baseball draft. He was a high school player, I believe, out of San Mateo, California. Spent a number of years in the Twins minor league system, called up to the Bigs in 1996. He was a pitcher and didn't have a particularly distinguished time in a Twins uniform. Began as a starter, and then he went to the bullpen, pitched 3 seasons, earned run average of 5.88. Eventually was dealt to the Cubs in 1999. Spent 4 seasons or parts of 4 seasons with the Cubs, Padres, Pirates, and actually Reds, and spent some time in Venezuela as well. He was suspended in 2007 for 50 games for failing a drug test. He pitched all over the world, pretty much. And it's not a name I've thought a lot about in a while, but it's a name, and it's a name that old-time Twins fans might simply remember because of the name. Yet he's back in the news for all the wrong reasons, as some of you may have seen. On Monday, he was found guilty of first-degree murder and attempted murder for an attack on his in-laws going back to 2021. I'm reading via the StarTribune.com story from a couple of, I think yesterday, actually. It was a jury trial. The verdict came after a 6-week trial. And prosecutors alleged that Serafini carried out the murder of Gary Spohr, S-P-O-H-R, and the attempted murder of Wendy Wood at their Lake Tahoe home in 2021. At the time, according to prosecutors, Serafini and his wife, Erin Spohr, were dealing with financial difficulties. Spohr's parents had a trust worth upwards of $11 million, had millions more in assets. The quote from the closing arguments by Assistant Chief Deputy District Attorney Rick Miller: was that the defendant, now convicted, despised his in-laws and had motives to carry out the killing. It's a person with a decades-long history of fights over money, fights over children. The person who makes threats, the person who began talking almost a decade before about wanting them dead. Serafini was not arrested until took more than 2 years after the killing. And apparently the sheriff's office had sought help from the public in identifying a suspect. They posted photos and videos of a person wearing a backpack, a hooded sweatshirt, and a mask over most of his face as he entered the Lake Tahoe home. This was before the killing, and after the killing, the same person was seen leaving the home. 2022, daughter of the father-in-law, Gary, offered a $150,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. There was a wrongful death civil lawsuit against Aaron Spoor and Serafini, alleging they had conspired to kill Gary Spoor and Wood. And several months later, indeed, Serafini was charged with murder, attempted murder, burglary, and child abuse. Aaron Spoor and Serafini remain married. She has never been charged in connection with the case. The criminal complaint shows that he used a .22 caliber handgun. His children had been inside the home with their grandparents while Serafini hid inside the house before carrying out the attack. After recovering from her physical injuries, the mother-in-law, Wood, later died by suicide. Daughter saying the suicide was a direct result of the attack. She couldn't handle it. She missed my dad like crazy. Testimony was that Serafini received extensive financial support from Aaron's parents, including a $90,000 check on the day of the murder. Couple were also in an open sexual relationship. Serafini's girlfriend initially charged with murder but agreed to a plea deal for lesser charges in exchange for testimony against Serafini. She testified that she drove him into Nevada after the killing and that he there dismantled a gun and threw it out the window of the car. Adrian Spoor, the daughter, said at a news conference after the guilty verdict, "It's been 4 years since my mom and dad were shot. It's been 4 years of just hell. Today, finally, justice was served." There was a juror who spoke to reporters after. If it wasn't Mr. Serafini, who else could it have been? For us, it was, would it be better if we had him, the person we think it is, go away, or letting him go and the chance of anything like this happening again? Serafini's attorney saying at closing that he does not fit into the video of the person or any of the videos of that person who's depicted going into or coming out of that house. The jury obviously did not agree with that aspect of it. Just a horrific story that probably part of the reason it's not getting more attention is, you know, it shouldn't matter, but his level of success. I mean, he wasn't that well known of a pitcher. And I don't know when I first became aware of this investigation, this story. I think I was vaguely aware of developments, but I'd intended to get to some of this on yesterday's show after Monday being the day that he was indeed convicted. It's difficult to even imagine what the scene must have been like within that household. And as I said, Serafini's still married to his wife, who insists that she does not believe that he was at all involved in the grisly murder. Just an awful, tragic story on so many levels across the board. And then you have the added complication of the wife. There was also an attempted murder charge against Serafini to end her life. And ultimately, you could argue he does because of her difficulty dealing with the loss of her husband. Brutal story. Danny Serafini, the assumption is, will be going away for a long, long time. This was a case that was adjudicated by a jury in California after a 6-week trial. There may be some trial stuff that we're going to talk about among the subjects with Pat Kessler. He is scheduled to join us in studio at about 5:30 today. We have a couple of other news on the march items that, well, we might just have to just sort of co-opt part of the Kessler episode with news on the march, or bring the two things together, because there's a couple of items there I want to get into regarding a timely local story. But we also have the top 5 at 5 coming up. What do you have on your docket for this afternoon?
We will get to the NBA player you hinted at earlier, and we'll talk some All-Star game.
Gatorade Zero, the #1 proven electrolyte blend, made with zero sugar. Designed to hydrate better than water so you can lose more sweat and push more limits. Gatorade Zero, is it in you?
This episode is brought to you by Navy Federal Credit Union. Navy Federal can help you find and finance the right vehicle with ease. With Navy Federal's car buying service powered by TrueCar, you can find the vehicle that's right for you as you search through inventory and compare models. And you can get an amazing rate when you finance with Navy Federal. Visit NavyFederal.org/TrueCar to learn more. Navy Federal is insured by NCUA, credit and collateral subject to approval. Visit NavyFederal.org/TrueCar to learn more.
Wasabi Technologies is purpose-built to free businesses from skyrocketing storage costs and unpredictable egress fees from those old and top-heavy legacy providers. You know, the big guys. Wasabi is the go-to provider for professional and collegiate sports teams around the world. From Wasabi's AI-enabled intelligent media storage, Wasabi Air, to the industry's only cloud storage service with triple protection against cyber criminals, Wasabi is driving innovation in data storage, all for up to 80% less than those other guys. Try them out for free at wasabi.com.